I was waiting for my husband to come home from work, and he was late. He promised to be on time, because today was our big day. Exactly 4 years ago, we met. I remember we met as if by chance. It's still funny when I think about it. We bumped into each other in the doorway. I dropped my phone from my hands, good thing it didn't break, and spilled coffee on it. Word of mouth and our relationship began to develop rapidly. And now I've cooked dinner, lit candles, dressed up and remembered to wear nice lingerie. And still no sign of him. I tried calling, but my husband didn't pick up. I can't imagine how he could be late at work today. Did he forget what day it was? Yes, I didn't warn him about dinner. But in past years, my husband always remembered our date. It was usually a romantic evening. And he always came with flowers. As I waited, my husband still didn't pick up the phone, and I uncorked a bottle of wine and finished my second glass. The phone rang, and an unfamiliar number came up. I answered the phone. I heard a calm male voice that was unfamiliar to me. "Good evening, Linda. My name is John, and you don't know me. But I know your husband, and I can show you where he is now. Are you interested?" Yes, I was very interested. And in fact, I had many questions in my mind at once. Who is this man? How does he know me? What does he have to do with my husband? And, in fact, where is my husband, since he has forgotten our date? I answered the man that I wanted to know where my husband was at the moment. Immediately, I received a picture. On it, my beloved was sitting with some girl at a table in a cafe. They were laughing and looked very happy. And the girl was beautiful. You can't even criticize her. Is this photo really taken today? As if reading my mind, the man on the phone asked if I could hear him. Oh, I didn't even turn it off. I hope I didn't say anything out loud. Yes, I answered quietly. Honestly, my mood was down and I felt kind of devastated. But I still hoped it was all a prank, a misunderstanding, or a joke. Then, Linda, I suggest we get together and take a look at this couple from the outside, so that you can put all your doubts to rest. We continued talking. John said that the photo was of his wife. He had long suspected her of infidelity, so he had been following her and found out that she was secretly seeing a man. John must have been a detective at heart or a man who liked to tickle his nerves, otherwise I can't explain his behavior, but he followed her lover and then came to me. John's suggestion was simple: take revenge on the unfaithful spouses, take them by surprise, and look them in the eye. I was confused at the same time, but in my heart I really wanted to hurt my husband. How could he do this to me? I quickly got ready and arrived at the cafe where John was waiting for me and where our couple was sitting. I saw everything with my own eyes. We were standing in front of the cafe, hiding under the shade of a tree, even though it was deep evening. And they were across the street. They were having so much fun, the smile never left their faces. They were touching each other all the time. My husband would touch her hand, or put his arm around her, or this girl would squeeze his fingers. Just like teenagers. I wanted to take a rock and throw it at them to wipe away their happy, contented faces. But John said not to get too excited because he'd already taken care of everything. Speaking of John, such a handsome guy, tall, sturdy, and polite. I couldn't help but wonder what his wife saw in my husband. He's shorter and a little overweight. Suddenly his hands, with which he constantly touched her, seemed so greasy, lustful, and disgusting. I twitched. John noticed this and apparently thought I was chilly. He quickly walked over to a nearby parked car. He opened it and took out 2 cups of coffee. I felt grateful to him, not just for the coffee, but for his attentiveness and support. I can't imagine how I would have coped alone if I had suddenly found out that my husband, my faithful and beloved husband, was cheating on me. John and I stood in silence and watched a couple of lovers eating something there. By the way, I never asked John how we were going to get back at them. Just about to do it, and our unfaithful asked for the bill and my husband paid. What a bastard! No, well, it's not that I don't like it when a man pays, but that money came out of our family budget. I suddenly thought, when I used to go to cafes and have dinner with him like that. And I didn't remember. The couple caught a cab and drove off. John and I got into his car and followed. We pulled up to a hotel on the edge of town. Our disreputable selves got out in a hug and went inside the building. I spoke first, so what's next? Are we going to wait for them to finish their business? I didn't even want to think which ones. John looked at me carefully and it was like he woke up. Apparently, he had been in his own thoughts the whole time, and so had I. He smiled, no. There's an acquaintance who works here, he'll let us know what room they've taken. Then he added, are you ready? I nodded uncertainly, but in my heart I didn't even know if I was ready or not. Catching my husband off guard like that. We got out of the car, headed to the hotel entrance, and went in. At the front desk, some guy from the staff whispered something in my companion's ear. He came up to me and confidently said, let's go. Where did he get that kind of focus and readiness? Apparently, he hadn't been planning this moment for so long for a reason. He and I approached the room of the disreputable. There was noise and shouting through the door. I suddenly felt myself blushing. I wanted to run away, to avoid going into their room and seeing what was happening. The noise did not stop. On the contrary, I heard my husband's voice, distant and muffled, as if from a distance. The girl obeyed him, came and opened the door. She was in a hotel robe that barely covered her body. John's unfaithful woman backed up and suddenly grabbed her stomach, then with her other hand she started to cover her butt and crept into the interior of the room. We went in. She started banging on the door of the bathroom and also the toilet. The door gave way and swung open. I saw my husband sitting on the toilet. He was oohing and ahhing, holding his stomach and making loud noises. My mouth dropped open in bewilderment. That's not what I came alive to see. The girl ran up to her husband and, not paying attention to his tummy problem and to us too, started shoving him off the toilet. And he clutched at it with both hands and wouldn't budge. They fought, and as if they didn't notice us, they were absorbed only in one thing, to take the place they wanted. I could no longer watch the scene. I was disgusted, and it all looked like a staged tragicomedy. Even my husband didn't seem to notice me. I turned and ran out of the room. John followed me. I ran down the hotel hallway, choking back tears and feeling like I couldn't hold them back. John caught up with me and stopped me, grabbing my arm and pulling me tightly against him. He said, "I'm sorry, they must have miscalculated the dose of laxatives at the cafe. And I didn't realize it would look like this." I was laughing all of a sudden. He smiled back. We stood alone in the hallway, me sobbing and laughing loudly, and he stroked my head and held me tightly against him. It was very comforting.
Thank you for listening to the end. Please like and subscribe. And write your stories in the comments.
That is the thing that hurts the husband the most. We give you the safe, happy life you want while offering the dirty sex you crave, but you are the ones refusing. You could have been having hot, dirty sex with your husband the whole time, but you are the reason it is boring. Husband asked for the kinky shit and you refused, then gave it to another. That knowledge is the main reason a wife cheating on the husband ends in divorce. If you don't want to be bored, then be your husband's hot dirty slut. You'll both be happier.
Women give their sexual best to the men they have genuine physical desire for, and women can be way dirtier than most men think. Try reading one of those spicy romantic novels many women enjoy, if you don't believe me. They will sleep with many of these men in their prime, and have wild sexual experiences with them. If they fail to marry one of those guys by the time they're around 30, then they look to settle for a guy she lacks genuine sexual desire for, but is economically attractive. She will never give that guy her sexual best, and will likely cheat on that guy and divorce him as soon as it's beneficial. She will do things with the men she cheats with that she would never do for her husband, because those are the men she has sexual desire for. But those men would never commit to her, because they're the same men most women sexually desire, and they are having fun in life exercising their many options. Men should be very cautious about committing to a woman at that age with long sexual histories, and be suspicious of their motives. This is why a woman's body count from her teens and 20s matters. You do not want to be the guy a woman settles for when she is suddenly in a rush because of increasing age, after she has slept around with the many men she sexually desired. You will be in for a miserable marriage where you are never truly loved, will be used for your money, will face betrayal and disrespect, and she will never be as sexually open as she was with men from her past. You will get the bare minimum from her physically. It's a shitty thing women do for their own self-interest, and completely unfair to the man. In a fair world, the man willing to put a ring on her finger, support her and treat her with the respect like the men in her past wouldn't, would be the man the woman gives her best to. But that isn't how it works. The woman will spend the marriage resenting you because she believed she deserved better. She will have the attitude that you are lucky she is with you. If a woman has genuine desire for you, it is unmistakable. She will be sexually open and always be affectionate with you. She will respond to your texts and return you phone calls in a timely manner. She will not flake out on dates. She will want to spend a lot of time with you. She will not be talking to other men. If that desire isn't there, do not marry that woman.
I think that everything is both simpler and more complicated at the same time. The point is that modern society believes that within the framework of a modern marriage you can, if you try very hard, constantly work on the relationship, blow each other's ass and all that, achieve marital harmony and die in one day. To create such a self-sufficient unit, in which all the needs of both spouses will be satisfied. It's all bullshit. It's impossible because of human nature itself. Because we constantly want what we don't have. See, when you have someone, you want to be free. When you are single and free as the prairie wind, you conversely want to put on the yoke of a relationship. It's the same with sex. Especially with dirty sex. One and the same woman can't be a mistress in the kitchen and a beauty in the guest room and a lover in bed. Somewhere she will be understretched, and even if it will be everywhere on top, all the same, no matter how beautiful she was not, you will want novelty. It's the same with women, whatever they claim. Especially when they get older and begin to realize that no matter what they have a spouse, all he cannot give, and begins. For many, it all just stays in their heads without ever being realized. For others, it may be some even they themselves do not realize the itch that can cause an explosion, if the opportunity arises. And, the third, realizing that they do not get something from their husbands, begin to look for it on the side. The downside of marriage. It's either accept it or don't get married. Or just don't challenge these thoughts.
Most women want to marry a man who is a provider and can give her a safe, comfortable home. A good husband likely provides her with this. However, her biology craves the guys she is cheating with, and will turn herself loose in order to please them, often doing things with them she refuses to do with her husband. It's that simple. The safe, reliable husband is often not the man. They are the provider. She settled for the provider, but craves, and continues to bang the Chads and Tyrones. If this describes your situation and you have no children, leave her, as she's for the streets.
I used to work in the patch. It was commonly said that, when you returned from your stint, you had to hope that you had not lost your wife, merely your turn.
I'm not known for subtlety, I'm blunt, often controversial, and speak in a straightforward manner. If you get offended easily, don't continue reading. Look, there's no sugarcoating here. Cheating is a complex beast and it's dirty business. Why do some wives go for the nasty things with someone else, but not with the man they said I do to? It's about excitement, the thrill of the forbidden. Humans crave novelty, and when the marriage turns into a routine with the sparks gone, they start seeking novelty elsewhere. Is it brutal? Yes. But it happens, and it's a symptom of larger issues. Many people, not just women, chase the dopamine hit from new romance, the adrenaline of sneaking around. They're looking for something, a wild side that they think they can't bring home because it doesn't line up with their image of marriage. They've got this twisted idea that you can't be both nurturing and wild, tender and scandalously exciting with the same person. That doesn't excuse it, but that's the psychology. And let's be real, sometimes it's about feeling desired. If you're not making your woman feel wanted, if you're not paying attention, somebody else might. That's not to put all the blame on the guy, because at the end of the day, cheating is a choice. But it takes two to tango, and it takes two to let a marriage get so stale that this seems like the answer. According to Slay Motivation on Slaylebrity VIP social network, people like to pretend marriage is a fairy tale with no dark chapters. Well, wake up! Relationships are work, and if you stop working, stop communicating, stop bringing that fire, things fall apart. It's ugly, but it's life. Am I saying it's justified? Absolutely not. Cheating is betrayal, plain and simple. But if you're asking why it happens, you've got to look at the whole picture, the human need for excitement, feeling wanted, and the marital stagnation that can drive a person to break vows. It's not about condoning it, it's about understanding it so you can guard against it. Now, for the husbands out there, it's a call to arms. Recognize the game. Keep the passion alive. That doesn't mean outrageous stunts every day, but it does mean paying attention, keeping things fresh, and being the kind of man she doesn't want to stray from. You control only your actions, not hers. Make sure you are playing your A game. Marriage isn't the end of growth or excitement. It's a commitment to evolving together, keeping the flame burning bright. When you slack, the consequences can be severe. And if you find yourself in this mess, it's time to reassess everything, your relationship, yourself, and where you go from here. Remember, fellow lions, life's a battle and love is the war. Equip yourself, fight smart, fight hard, and fight to win.
Because they're evil black widows. Any man can avoid the pitfalls of marriage by simply not getting married. It's not meant for everyone, especially with everything working against his side. I used to be a starry-eyed boy and wanted to make a future woman very happy and just live a happy life with her. Then, I got a little older, gained clarity, experienced more and realized something like that was more akin to a fairy tale, instead of what really happens. I used to think, she's married, you don't have a chance, bud. But, that's obviously not true. I have a relative that has a string of failed marriages. My previous brother-in-law is a good man. My relative now has his home and told him to pay her more money out of pocket on the spot in addition to her being the one to initiate the divorce. She comes crying to me and more often, my mother and claims all the time, I just want a man to love me. She's middle-aged and not doing much with herself. The irony of her statement is that some of the guys she chooses are blatantly terrible people,
One of them even knocked her up when she was funneling money from her parents to fund her parties and hotel stays while under the guise of going to university, while the good men in her life she quickly got bored with, so she just packed her bags, took their stuff and continues the vicious cycle.
Oh boy, do I have a story for you? A very long, interesting, slightly weird, but not unheard of, romantic story. When my mom was a teenager, she dated this guy, Danny. She and Danny dated for a while and eventually broke it off because my mom had to move to Georgia to stay with her uncle for a while. Years later, after my mom has moved back home, she's visiting my grandmother at the hospital where she meets my dad. A couple months down the road, she gets pregnant at 18, his parents force them into an unhappy marriage. I'm born, I'm a girl, lots of confusion about that. My mom is now 19, 3 years later my sister is born, then 10 years later they get a nasty divorce. After the divorce, my mom is in a terrible, inconsolable place in her life. She's unhappy, my sister is alienated from her by my father, she works unholy hours at the hospital, she has few friends, the works. So, she's on Facebook one day and links up with her old pal Danny. They instantly hit it off and start dating. I was always very wary of the men my mother dated because I had plenty of trust issues because of my own father B. She worked so much I barely got to see her or spend time with her. I was 17 and a senior in high school. I needed my mom, C. I didn't want another father figure in my life yet, selfish, I know. I decide it's time I start giving these guys a chance, so I go with her to meet Danny one day. Everything about Danny seemed great. I was in love. I always wanted the perfect dad, and I was so sure it was him. He had a good job and could take care of my mom so that she didn't have to work so many hours anymore. He was so nice and funny. He always took us to do fun stuff, go-karting, bowling, arcades, etc. And most of all, he had a son. I always wanted a brother. His son was younger than me, around my sister's age, 14 to 15 or so, but I didn't care. I had a brother. So after only a few months of dating, maybe 3 to 4, Danny, my mom, and I move into a house together. My stepbrother lived with his grandmother, but we saw him often. During Thanksgiving, they decide to spur of the moment get married. I was happy, she was happy, all seemed well and we could finally get on with our lives again, or so we thought. After a few weeks of being married, everything goes sour. Danny turns out to be a liar, a cheat, a thief, and all of the worst possible things you can think of. Basically, a wolf in sheep's clothing. I won't go into details, because there are a lot of details. My newfound brother turns out to be a giant, whiny pain in my ass who makes my life a living hell 99.9% of the time. As for my mom and I, we were back to being miserable. Fast forward, I graduate from high school, with honors, top of my class. I go through a hellacious summer full mental torment. I was at the point where I did not want to live, but I was too scared to do anything to take my life, so I suffered. But it was all worth it in the end. I end up going to college out of state and moving into the dorms. At this point in the story, I bet you're thinking that this is all about my mom. Well, you're wrong. It's about me, I just had to give a good background. It's around the end of October when I decide that I didn't want to attend the university next semester, and decided that I would move back home and enroll in the local community college, but I still had to finish out the semester. So, that weekend when I went home every weekend because it wasn't but an hour and a half drive. I'm met by this huge, handsome hunk who's sitting on my couch in the living room of my mother's house. Me, hello? Handsome hunk.
Hey.
Me, do you know where my mom is? Handsome hunk.
Yeah, she's out back.
Turns out, Danny had another son. He's older, 19 at the time, and has a different mom than my stepbrother. Logan, aka Handsome Hunk, was moving in with my mom and stepdad for a little while so he could work with my stepdad, who was previously unemployed for several months and left it up to my mom to pay all of the bills. As I mentioned before, I had always wanted a brother, now I have two. Logan and I hit it off quickly. I went to work with him the next day and spent the whole day getting to know him. I was so excited, he was so much cooler than my younger brother. We ended up spending a lot of time together, basically every waking moment of every weekend, and he ended up coming to see me at school a couple of times. It was official. I had the coolest brother ever. Soon it was Christmas time and I was moving out of the dorms and moving back home. Up until this point, I thought of him strictly as my brother, nothing more. One night, we were laying in his bed watching a movie in his room. This wasn't unusual, while my other brother was asleep in his bed on the other side of the room. We got to talking, then to whispering, all while inching closer to one another. Then he leans in to kiss me. I kiss him back. It was one of the most beautiful, loving kisses ever, I'm not exaggerating. Literal sparks flew. Afterwards, I looked at him and he confessed that he'd been in love with me the whole time. I had no idea and didn't know what to say, because I had only thought of him as a brother. I ended up getting out of bed and going to my room. The next day, we talked about it and I suggested that we shouldn't do anything about it. We should end the romantic relationship there because, I mean, we were step-siblings, right? He agreed and things went back to normal, for maybe 3 days. Then I couldn't take it anymore and decided I really loved him too. We ended up having a moment alone to talk about it, then I ended up smearing my lipstick olive over his face, literally. We decided we would give it a try and secretly start dating. If our parents found out, we'd both be kicked out for sure because there's no way they'd allow it. We spent even more time together because I had moved home and I saw him every day. We grew even closer and fell even deeper in love. My younger brother became extremely jealous of all of the time we were spending together. He started becoming even more hateful than he already was. By this time, it's around April. We had just celebrated Logan's 20th birthday. One day, my younger brother was on this hateful streak, cussing anyone and everything in his path. He'd already had his outs with my mom several times, but today was different. Today he said something that was unforgivable and intolerable. I decided to tell my mom. She decided she'd had enough. She decides to leave for the night. My stepfather is livid. He blames me for everything wrong in his life, his marriage, his finances, everything you can think of and more. I'm inconsolable. Logan is trying to calm me down and trying to hand me my inhaler so I can catch my breath. With no mercy, my stepdad throws us out of the house. He gives us 20 minutes to pack a bag and get out. We took the opportunity and ran. We've been looking for a way to leave the house and live on our own for months. This was our chance. We packed everything we could fit in my car and left. We booked a hotel room for the night so we could sort everything out. Almost 2 years later, we have our own house, he bought me a new car, we have 2 dogs, I'll graduate from college with an accounting degree this May, and we are currently trying for a baby. We aren't married yet, but we're waiting for the right time. It hasn't always been easy. We lived a camper that was barely big enough for 2 people to stand up in for a solid year before we could get a house. We struggled and budgeted our money. We lived strictly off of his income while he supported me through school. We have a very solid relationship. We're true to each other. We love each other with a passion I can't describe with words alone. We're the perfect match for one another. As for my mom, she's still married to Danny. She's struggling in her marriage, she's having a hard time coping, and has turned into an alcoholic. I pray for her often, but I'm just praying for the day that things turn around for her. It's been a tough couple of years for Logan and I, but we've had each other. We've defeated every challenge that's come our way, and we've come out 10x as strong. It's odd that we're step-siblings and not everyone is pleased with our relationship. Most of my family still doesn't know, but our relationship is built out of love and trust. It's solid and true, and that's all I could ever want.
Thank you for listening to the end. Comment and send us your stories. Subscribe and like. Bye.
I was walking in the park before going to bed and met my ex-boyfriend. We talked and, as it turned out, he was already married. After talking a little more, it turned out that his wife was pregnant, her hormones were playing up, so he started to annoy her and she had just left him, saying that she was going to file for divorce. As we talked, we reached my house. He asked for a cup of tea, he really wanted to talk more. We went to my place, there was beer in the fridge. We sat, sipped beer and talked. After drinking a little, he started to talk to me. He started complaining that he had not had sexual intimacy with his wife for a long time. He tried to talk me into intimacy, but I only allowed him to lick me, and that was just an old memory. In the process he became very aroused, and it felt good. He, of course, wanted more and I agreed. After all that, I sent him home. And I realized that I was not interested in him at all, I had no feelings for him anymore and I even asked myself how I was able to date him for a while. After this incident passed a couple of weeks, I had already forgotten about him. And suddenly he started calling and complaining about his wife again. Turns out she tracked him down while he was at my place and threw a tantrum. He tried to calm her down by saying that he was at a friend's house and they were all just having a drink together. However, she would not calm down and demanded that he take her to this apartment and show her these friends. He, of course, refused, saying that he was not going to do it, because he would not allow to humiliate himself and make a fool of himself. And, in general, she herself left him and filed for divorce, and now she wants something else from him. In addition, he warned me that his wife found my number in his phone and is going to call me. He begged me not to tell her anything about what we had then, but to support his game by telling his wife that I was the wife of his friend with whom we had been drinking together that night. I was disgusted, of course, but I agreed, telling him never to call me again. A couple days later he did. His wife called me, started asking me a lot of questions, and I, as promised, held firm, told her some more or less believable story. Everything seemed to work out, his wife believed me and, satisfied with my answers, quite correctly said, "Goodbye," to me. She never bothered me again. I was very happy about it. But for some reason I felt so vile, as if I had been wiped off my feet and spit on. Even though I wasn't actually his mistress. And after what happened, I didn't want to see or hear from him anymore. As I found out later, his wife came back to him, gave birth to his daughter, and after that he started cheating on her secretly all the time. She found out about it somehow. And in response, she gave him, immediately with 2 of his coworkers at the Christmas corporate party, very beautiful and branchy horns. And then she made sure that all his other coworkers found out about it. As a result, he had to leave his favorite job, because he became a subject of constant ridicule. For myself, I concluded that never in my life, under any circumstances, will never again get involved with married men. However, they say that you can't be sure of anything, because then it is bound to happen. That's what happened to me. This whole story drove me into a terrible depression and complete disappointment in people in general and men in particular. To distract myself somehow, I took a vacation and flew to Puerto Rico. And there I met the biggest love of my life. It was some kind of incredibly bright flash. I realized then what they call love at first sight. We spent an unforgettable 10 nights together, full of passion and fire. He said that he had never experienced anything like it, said that we were perfect for each other and that we just had to stay together forever. However, on the morning of the day I was supposed to leave, his wife arrived unexpectedly with their 3 children. And she, oddly enough, had a different vision for his future. As I flew home, my emotional background changed from hysterical laughter to unrestrained tears. I so often ran to the toilet to cry alone that my neighbors and the stewardess probably thought that I was returning from the resort with diarrhea. That's the story.
Do you want to know how the further fate of the main character turned out? Then write in the comments, we'll release a sequel. And thanks for listening to the end. Like and subscribe.
Dear subscribers and viewers of our channel, it is very important for us to understand what you like and what you don't like. Please do not hesitate to share your opinions in the comments.
Hi. My name is Victoria, I'm 28 and I want to tell you my story. Maybe someone here will tell me what to do. I can't hide and keep quiet anymore. I have a wonderful husband with whom we never quarreled and lived in complete harmony and understanding until a certain point. I work as a logistics specialist at one enterprise. And there an incident happened to me that I can't keep quiet about. Last week, as in other days, I did my job. I was a little behind, but it was easy to fix. Then my boss, Ethan, called me into his office. He was angry and demanded that I turn in the month's paperwork. I explained that I was running out of time. I asked him to give me some time to get the paperwork in order. He reluctantly agreed. When I was done, I went back to see him. Ethan quickly reviewed the reports, found a few inaccuracies, and told me to redo them. I was about to go back to my desk when my boss gave me his. He said it would be faster. I didn't contradict him. He was already mad at me. As I got to work, I heard a click. It was Ethan locking the door. He answered my mute question by saying that it was quieter to work that way, no one would bother him. I reacted normally, but cautiously. Then he took 2 glasses and a bottle of whiskey out of the cupboard. I didn't want to drink, but he persuaded me to drink. I hadn't eaten anything in the morning, so I was immediately intoxicated after drinking the alcohol. I was in a suspended state, not understanding anything, but after a moment I felt someone's hand under my clothes. I started to resist, wanted to scream, but Ethan covered my mouth, promised to increase my salary and not to add extra work. I stopped resisting and agreed. He sat me on the desk, stroking my thigh with one hand and unbuttoning my blouse with the other. Taking off my blouse, he unhooked my bra and grabbed my breasts. Gently caressing it with his hands, he moved lower. My shoes were the first to fall off my feet, then he unbuttoned my skirt and pulled it off, along with my pantyhose. He slipped his hand into my panties and pulled them down. I was completely naked when he took off his jacket, unbuttoned his shirt, and pulled down his underpants and underwear. Rolling me over on my stomach, he put me doggy style and shoved his small cock inside me. As we had sex, he squeezed my ass tightly. It didn't last long. After a couple minutes, he come inside me. He took some tissues, wiped his cock, and wiped me down. Pulling up his pants, he threw things at me and kicked me out of the office. As I walked down the hall, I didn't understand how this could have happened. In many years of marriage, this was the first time I'd cheated on my husband. And the worst part of it all was that I started to remember that incident a lot. And not in the way that I should. The thing is, my husband is practically perfect. For life. Including sex. He's gentle, attentive, and alert. I didn't have much experience before him, and so I was fine with everything. The way my boss fucked me was disgusting. But remembering his rudeness and inconsiderateness, I, on the one hand, felt dirty and used, and on the other hand this mixture of shame, guilt before my husband and the feeling that I was fucked, caused me hot waves in my lower abdomen. So when I got home, I stood under the hot shower for a long time, wondering how I was going to tell my husband all this. While thinking about it, I caught myself starting to masturbate. I was brought back to earth by the sound of my husband opening the door. Without deciding what to do, I came naked out of the bathtub, kissed him hard and, without letting him say a word, knelt down in front of him, then I unbuttoned his pants and started caressing his cock. I have to say that our sex life is quite orderly and measured, almost on a schedule, even though we are both still young. Therefore, this erotic improvisation of mine threw him, to put it mildly, into a slight shock. However, the firmness and readiness to continue his cock said that he did not mind this, at least. Pressing my ass against him, I bent over and rested my hands on the wall. And, when he entered me, I thought about the fact that my husband has both stronger and bigger than the boss. And at the same moment I was horrified at my own cynicism. To think that instead of confessing everything and repenting to my husband, I just seduced him and have sex with him in the hallway. And then my common sense took over. Tell me, well, who would be better if you tell him everything now? It whispered to me. No one, I answered myself, and with all the passion I gave myself to the process. At dinner, my husband sat quiet and thoughtful. I wondered if he suspected something, I thought. However, it was the opposite. He admitted that he considers himself guilty for paying me little attention lately. A week passed. My passions had subsided a bit. The boss talked to me in a very formal way. My husband brought me a bouquet of flowers, which wasn't quite the usual. And although I continued to berate myself for cheating, I remembered more and more the feeling I'd gotten from my helplessness during an unceremonious boss fuck. Trying to repeat this with my husband was not successful. I just could not find the words to explain to him how I wanted. And that the main thing here for me is not sex, but psychology. However, he did not understand or did not want to understand. Or could not. Although earlier it seemed to me that we are perfect for each other. And, the fantasies were getting more and more insistent in my head. So, one day, when I found myself alone in Ethan's office and his hand lingered on my thigh, I went and locked the door myself. It's true what they say, the more often you do it, the more often you want it. Now I have a new fantasy. I want my boss to be behind me, and at the same time I caressed my husband's lips. But I don't know how to realize it practically. So I guess I will have to realize it without my husband.
Thank you for listening to the end. Subscribe and like. Bye.